when this was published in 1985, there were not hardly any books with the word copywriting in the title. There were classic marketing books, and you know all of them as well as I do, Scientific Advertising, Ogilvy on Advertising, but this was the first book that said copywriting, and so that was the difference.
It's time for another episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, digging into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and pretty much any other shiny object that happens to catch my attention. Today, my special guest is Robert Bly, and we're going to be discussing his book, The Copywriter's Handbook, a step-by-step guide to writing copy that sells, which is now in its 4th edition. Bob, it's such an honor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, and I appreciate your having me, Shaun.
Let's kick off our conversation with a bit of what we might call the Bob Bly origin story. So for the listeners who are encountering you for the first time in our talk today, what are a few things they need to know about you?
I have, which is unusual for a copywriter, I have a BS degree from the University of Rochester in chemical engineering. And I originally set out in life to be a scientist. But I'll give you the short version. I can expand if you wish. But gradually I realized my true love, as much as I love science and technology, was really writing even above that. And I graduated with the BS in chemical engineering, but sought out jobs as writers, and I had, in several venues, but ended up getting hired as a technical copywriter by Westinghouse Electric Corporation in the late 70s, and that's how I got into this and made the transition.
Well, in preparation for the interview, I spent some time reviewing your bio, and I think it'd be fair to say that you've walked out several years worth of career experiences as you've been on your journey. And so, on the one hand, I think I could call you a marketer, I could call you an author, a copywriter, and a host of other professional titles. But I'm curious, if somebody walks up to you on the street and asks you who you are and what do, how do you view yourself? How do you self-identify?
There's 2 answers to that. The first one that was meant humorously in the pre-internet era, when as a copywriter I did almost exclusively direct mail, people would say to me, well, what do you do for a living? And I'd say, well, do you know how you get in the office at home all that junk mail? They'd say, yeah. I'd say, well, I write the junk mail. But really, the way I think of myself is as a writer. Yes, I do speaking, consulting. A lot of us have mixed hats in the information digital age. I have my own online publishing business. I'm a book author, but primarily I am a writer. That's how I think of myself.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey, maybe as you transition from the chemical engineering path into writing. When did you first get exposed or realize, say, the magic and power of well-written copy? And when did you know that had become a bigger part of your professional journey?
I'll answer it a little differently. In terms of writing in general, not particularly copywriting, I always liked to write. I always liked to read. I had actually gotten some short stories written and sold to science fiction magazines when I was in high school. But at college, even though I majored in chemical engineering, I was on the college newspaper, and I didn't realize, as a features writer, but I didn't realize that their student paper, which was very unusual for a college that small, was daily, not weekly. And so being on that paper, I got 2 educations, one in chemical engineering and technology and science, and the other one in writing. And so by the time I graduated, I was already not a great, but a competent writer. And marketing, I didn't get really exposed to. My job at Westinghouse after college, my first job was in marketing, and my second job after that. But, I really didn't get exposed to marketing as a profession until I had graduated college.
And in terms of the journey that this book has been on, obviously this new edition is the 4th edition. But tell us, when did the original version of this book release?
I started as a technical writer, technical copywriter at Westinghouse in the late 70s. I became a full-time freelance copywriter in early 1982. And 3 years later, in 1985, the first edition of this book was released. I was always compelled from an early time to write books on subjects that I think people wanted to know about and that I had learned through my own work and experience. And so copywriting was a natural for me. And actually, when this was published in 1985, there were not hardly any books with the word copywriting in the title. There were classic marketing books, and you know all of them as well as I do, Scientific Advertising, Ogilvy on Advertising, but this was the first book that said copywriting, and so that was the difference.
Well, and I was looking online to see when the third edition of this book released, and it looks like that was back in 2006. And as I think about all the new developments we've had in the past 14 years in terms of how businesses are connecting with their customers, how individuals are connecting with their fans and their tribes, I might go so far as to say that to some degree, everybody's a copywriter to some extent right now, if I think in comparison to what we were all doing back 14 years ago. In terms of the new edition, like what were some of the big topics or the big changes that you knew you would need to tackle as you brought this fourth edition to life?
The biggest one by far was how to write successful, persuasive copy in what is now truly the multi-channel marketing age. You know, the last big change was when the internet first reared its head, when we started to be exposed to digital marketing. But today, it's not just the digital era, it's a multi-channel era. And the biggest challenge is writing campaigns that integrate multiple marketing channels for your offer to reach the same set of prospects. So that's one big change. And then secondarily, we have specific chapters on things that have just become much more important today in 2020 than they were in 2006. For example, writing for social media, writing email marketing, blogging, that kind of thing. So we added half a dozen chapters on task areas or media that we didn't have in the other book. But the main approach is, you have more decisions to make. When I first started as a copywriter, a client would come to me and say, we want a full-page ad in Wall Street Journal. You just do it. Now if someone says that, the first question is, well, why an ad in the Wall Street Journal? Why not a Facebook ad campaign? Why not do PR? Why not put it up on Pinterest or do an infographic? There are so many more choices to make and decisions to make, rather, before you say, okay, I'll write that. But in the old days, clients said, we want a TV commercial. You wrote a TV commercial.
Another question I have in terms of, this book has had a 35-year life at this point as it's gone through its different versions and iterations. And for you as a copywriter, I'd be curious to hear how you've had to shift your perspective or shift your thinking in terms of the shelf life of copy or marketing pieces that you're putting together. Because I think historically, in some ways, I would say the impact of a lot of the things we were creating had a longer tail or a longer shelf life versus today in terms of social media and some of the ad copy that we're writing. The actual shelf life is very short. Some things might only be relevant for 24 hours. So how have you shifted your perspective and how do we deal with that in terms of investment for what we're writing time-wise?
Well, we always knew that if you wrote something that was currently in the public purview, it was in the news, that you would get a higher response than if you wrote something that seemed evergreen or written without knowledge of current happenings. The digital technology has allowed us to target that much more specifically. So, for example, I had a client that published a stock market newsletter, the basic theme which was he would tell you what stocks not to buy because their companies were flawed and faulty and were going to tank. And also he would tell you, of course, you could short them and make money. So when Martha Stewart, if you remember that, was having her trial for the ImClone scandal, they had this stock photo of her that was in the newspaper every day or a lot. And whatever days that photo was in the newspaper, we sent out an email with that same photo, and our response rate would skyrocket because it was tied into what was happening to the reader, the subscriber, the customer that day. They talk about geo-targeting today, but you're also allowed to time target much more precisely and therefore with greater effect. Now, some things still can be evergreen and last for a long time, but more often our promotions have shorter lifespans, as you said, because so much of it is digital today. They are more easily updated and revised and brought current versus the old days, where if we did a mailing piece for Publishers Clearinghouse and sent it to 1 million households, that's out there. You can't pull it back. So we have much more flexibility and leverage with timeliness today.
And Bob, a lot of the people in my circles, a lot of my listeners, they're book authors, they're marketing professionals. And so for this next part of the conversation, I'd love to have you comment on some of the ways that they can maybe improve some of the things that they're doing, some of the low-hanging fruit that they can take hold of and improve their communication with their fans, with their customer base. So next, I'd love to have you just comment about what are we doing with social media posts? I guess, what do you see that people are often doing wrong, and what are some quick hit ways that they can improve?
I don't really, and I don't mean to duck or deflect your question, but I don't really advise people on social media. I do some social media. I do some for clients. I do Facebook ads, but social media is not really in my wheelhouse. So I tend not to be a commentator on that. There is one chapter in the book on social media, which I wrote based on my own experience and also a lot of my cohorts who are much more into it than I am, like Michael Stelzner of the Social Media Examiner. But it is not my go-to marketing channel. So I don't think I should pontificate on it.
And that's no problem, Bob. I appreciate the honesty and the integrity with that answer. How about email marketing? What are we doing right, and where can we improve?
Email marketing is the opposite for me. That is my go-to marketing channel. You know, there's 50, 40 channels, and you can't be equally conversant in all of them. Some you like more, some you like less. Most of my success for myself and my clients and my results is in the area of email marketing. And the thing that is least understood there by a lot of businesses is that the money, the most valuable thing you can have in an internet marketing or online marketing or multi-channel marketing business today is your e-list. In the direct mail days, we called it your house file, your list of opt-in email subscribers to your online newsletter. Emailing them will get many times better response than generating leads through any other channel. And so I often tell people the money is in the list. So in email, nothing is more important than the list, and the best list is your own, and the second best list is the list of your affiliates.
You know, if we logically follow the path after we open an email and click on something, that'll often take us to either a website or some sort of a landing page. What are some of the quick hits or ways we can improve in terms of our websites and landing pages today? We all seem to have a lot of them.
Here are a few of them real quickly. Number one, if you have a call to action and or you're driving people through a sales funnel, do not send them to your website homepage. Send them specifically to a landing page that is written and designed to maximize conversion on your offer, your call to action. So number one, send your traffic to landing pages rather than your homepage. As much as you love your website, create landing pages for your multi-channel marketing campaigns. And secondly, in addition to that, don't put on your landing pages the same navigation and buttons that you have on your website. On a landing page, there should just be the copy, the graphics, and if there's any video, and the only choice the visitor has is to click yes and take your offer, whether it's buying something or downloading a free white paper, or leave. Those should be the only two choices. There should be zero navigation or menu buttons on a landing page.
The last thing I'd like you to comment on in this section in the interview would be ads. You know, I have friends who are individual authors and friends who are managing big marketing budgets. They're both buying Facebook ads and advertisements on Instagram. What kind of feedback do you have for doing advertising well?
Well, online advertising, like email marketing, is extremely effective. The only thing that you need to know is, and we have a page of this in the book, you should go on each of the major search engines and ad networks, Facebook, Google, etc., and you can get their policies for advertising. Because the biggest problem is that Facebook in particular, but the others are too, are very restrictive. So, for example, I have a lot of clients in the nutritional supplement industry, and we're selling a weight loss supplement. We cannot say in our ad, take this and lose 10 pounds in 7 weeks like you see on TV or in print. Facebook does not allow it. I don't know if you've ever noticed them, but you'll see these ads pop up on Facebook that say, doctors tell you to throw this vegetable away. Don't eat this food. Those lead to sales pages on the weight loss supplements, but they do it indirectly with a curiosity generator because Facebook won't permit direct advertisement, let's say, of among many other things, a weight loss product.
And Bob, one important question I think a lot of us face is, when do we actually hire a professional copywriter? Because I think everybody wants to, in certain seasons of developing a brand or a business, yes, we're bootstrapping things and we're doing everything ourselves, but how do we know it's time to bring in a professional versus continuing to write the copy ourselves?
The answer could be long and complex. I'll distill it and keep it short. First, one time people will bring in an outside copywriter is when they themselves or they and their staff are too busy to write all the copy they need. They don't want to hire yet another person because you only have so much incremental overload they can't handle. So for the extras, they outsource it. The second is if they need copy for something that is not in their niche or wheelhouse. For example, I have a client that will hire me to write their print ads because there's no one at their company that really knows how to write print ads that sell what we call off-the-page mail order ads. But I don't write their website. I don't write their emails. They feel they've got a good handle on that. The third situation in which you want to outsource, and this is what larger and experienced direct marketers do, and most digital marketing today is direct response marketing. You've written, let's say, your own successful landing page. The amateur or the less sophisticated client just leaves it. The more professional or more sophisticated client says, can I have someone else write something to test against what I did to see if it beats it? Because I can pay someone, a nominal fee or at least a limited fee, and if they can get a 2% higher conversion rate than my page can, I'm going to make a fortune. So they hire outsiders to beat their control. What the marketer has now, their landing page, their email, their direct mail package, that's the best working promotion that they have in that channel is called the control. And successful direct marketers get that way by continually testing new copy to beat their control. Amateurs or people who are not direct marketers don't do that as much.
And Bob, in terms of the reader's journey with this book, let's say somebody picks it up and they read it from cover to cover. What's that big encouragement or big takeaway you hope everybody's discovered in these pages?
The takeaway is the three most important things in copywriting. We used to think it was all psychological. Get inside the mind of the buyer and you'll be successful. Today, there are three factors. One is that what I just said is still true. You have to know human psychology, which is largely unchanging over the centuries. So that is the most important thing to know. But you also have to know compliance, as we were discussing before. Because if your words, your Facebook ads aren't served or don't get to the viewer or the watcher or the prospect, it doesn't matter how good your copy is persuasively or psychologically if it isn't accepted. So you have to understand the psychology of selling to a human being. You have to understand compliance, both with the ad networks, search engines, and also email services providers. They all have different rules. And then you have to understand sales funnels in the multi-channel marketing world. What is the best way? What are the best formulas, the best sales funnels for selling various types of products? And different industries and different products find that they have, even different companies within those industries, you'll find which channel and method is optimal for you. I know one client of mine, in fact, more than one, both of them are nutritional supplement sellers, and their most effective channel is not the internet, it's not TV, it's not magazine ads, it's half-page newspaper ads. And if you know the field of dietary supplements, I'm not telling you anything new, but if you don't, that may surprise you. But in that industry, half-page newspaper ads for a lot of the players are the gold mine.
And Bob, for the listeners who'd like to connect with you, find out more about the book, where can we do that on the web?
Well, if you want to find out more about the book and get a free sample chapter of it while you're at it, if you go to www.bly.com, that's my website, and then put /copy handbook, it'll take you to a page where you can see the outline of the book, where you can go click through to order the book online, and when you can also get the first chapter as a free sample.
Well, like we do with every episode, we'll have detailed links in the show notes, places where you can connect with Bob and find out more about the book. It's time to bring this episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation with Robert Bly. Once again, our book today was The Copywriter's Handbook, a step-by-step guide to writing copy that sells. Again, if you'd like to connect with Bob and find out more about the book, a great place to start is his website. Once again, you can check that out over at bly.com/copy handbook. And Bob, I just want to say thanks so much for sharing with us today. It's been a great pleasure and an honor to have you on the show.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it immensely.